I'll flip that camera around.
Looks like we're getting in there, crew. Volatile Revisions. Ew! Volatile Revisions. How you going, all? It's Angus from Club Safari here for the Volatile Revisions.
Vision. I mean, I'll probably call it something else. But
Yep.
now I'm just, that's where my audience was. They knew a bit about it. It was a little play on words. All right. So, when it gets to you eventually.
Yep.
Slow and steady. Tension's building.
Dun-na-na, dun-dun-dun, dun-na-na.
Holding's good.
Dun-dun-dun-dun. Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. Volatile Revisions. Angus from Club Safari.
Angus Graham. If you could be an animal, what animal would you be and why?
Oh, there's a lot to choose from. I think dog's pretty cool. Cruise around. My dog escaped yesterday and just went for a cruise up the street. I reckon that's pretty good life. Having said that, I reckon an eagle would be really cool. Flying, cruising up in the air, getting a bird's eye view.
I'll be interested to see where this turns out because I've asked people and I'll see what similarities, what people say, Yeah, interesting. All right, from the beginning, tell us, I'm asking this roughly as you started school, as you remember, 5, 6, 7 years, you started primary school. Tell us about your family, where you lived, what you did, and a bit of your schooling life.
Well, look, I suppose I grew up out in Gawler as a wee lad. I actually lived in Broken Hill up until I was 18 months old. Dad's a GP and he did a stint at the Broken Hill Hospital. And then we moved up to Gawler and he set up a practice there. So I went to all my primary school years in Gawler. And then I went to boarding school down in town, went to uni, and then washed out, got into construction and got into mountain bikes. And then, I'm going around in circles here, but mountain bikes. I used to ride BMX as a kid, raced BMX a lot, and then motorbikes. Got into motorbikes, riding on farms, having a good time. And when I was at uni, I didn't have enough cash for a motorbike, so I bought a mountain bike. Got an old Diamondback Apex hardtail for $750 and went out to the races. And that's where we met.
All those years ago.
So when I first got into the mountain bikes then, it was a lot of guys in Lycra with really expensive bikes. And Pat Fitz and I sort of wanted to get into racing. And we thought, look, we can't wear these tight Lycra. Let's get some safari suits. So we started cruising the op shops, picking up old safari suits and wearing them out to the races. And we were having an absolute ball, playing good music, and we got half serious about it, trying to get a little bit of cash on board to justify racing, and started the actual Club Safari, which was the badges, the second-hand clothes. We just go out to op shops and find really cool stuff, badge it up, and then sell it at the races. So we got into running a few evenings as well at the old Union Hotel. We did a fashion show there. We did another show down the end of Hindley Street at... I can't remember what that place was called. On the left, just as you go over Morfett Road, there's a nightclub there. There's a car park out the back of it now. It's over the road from the old...
Should be Red Square or something? No, not the back of that. No.
Hindley Street.
That end.
Yeah. Down in the west end, down to towards where the uni is now.
Not Cargo.
Oh, before Cargo, halfway from Morfett Street to Cargo on the left.
They used to play a lot of live bands and that in there
Yeah.
as well. Yeah.
And then it was a bit of a hardcore club for a while, I think.
Yeah.
We got sponsored by Two Dogs Lemonade. That was pretty cool. You had these little bottle openers that when you got on the bottle lid, they'd go... I think I've still got one hiding away in the shed. And, yeah.
So what year, you were mucking around with the idea and then you said, we're going to make a badge and clubs that you decided on a name... Club Safari. What year, roughly, do you reckon?
I reckon I started racing in about 96. So it was within 12 months of when we started. Must have been 96, 97. Pretty quickly, we got onto racing in safari suits. And initially I'd wear like a safari top, this one on the back with Silkscreen Club Safari on it, put the badge on, and I'd wear like a safari short with a white pull-up sock. One of the race meetings, I got a piece of foam over my helmet and cut it out and painted it black like an afro and raced in it. And then another race, so I put a shark fin on the helmet. And we were doing pretty good and styling it up. So our motto was Club Safari where style meets the racetrack. And so, yeah, that was 96, 97. And we were only racing sport because it was about the fun. But we had so much fun.
And there was other, like, loud clothing. Like, there was no fancy race kits. The only people that had a fancy race kit was the pros. They had a team jersey or something. But everyone else, even Fox Clothing wasn't really making too much racing gear for mountain bikers then, were they?
It was mainly motorbike gear. My first stuff that I raced in was motorbike gear. There's a picture I brought in. We'll get that up later of me wearing work boots, work shorts, Sinisalo long sleeve top. And I had one of those old white Bell helmets that had the hard plastic that all the roadies wore, and a pair of motorbike goggles, which there's a snapshot that you're in the background of the video. Marshy's San Ann is in the front, and I've got the goggles on top of the helmet, forgot to put them on. And I reckon that was Marble Hill when we ran 2 tracks down there, and it got really wet on that muddy chute along the track, dropped into a left-hander there. So, yeah, that was sort of early on in the days, and as we went on, Pat and I produced a lot more gear. We got a lot more people involved. Then we started the Gawler Mountain Bike Club, the inaugural year, and we ran a dual slalom there. That was really cool. We had...
What year again?
Oh, that must have been 98, 99, I reckon. We ran about 3 events there, a series, and it started off with dual compressor, a two-lane track side by side, and you raced on both tracks. And then by the 3rd race, we finished up with 4 cross with a last chance qualifier into the final. So you had 4 in the front row, 2 on the second row with a single track. And that was real bar banging action. That was awesome. We had the Club Safari tent set up down the bottom with a DJ and a bar and a couch. Dazzle, who's just had his knee replaced, there's video of him in one of yours nose wheeling to a big crash lander over that tabletop.
Yep.
And Johnny Hunt wiped out through the rocky section and opened a bit of a slot in the bridge of his nose. So, we came from motorbikes, both Pat and I, so we always built things pretty hardcore. It wasn't for the softies.
But it was a different atmosphere. I mean, you had to push up the hill. It was explain the piece of land and the hill a little bit.
As you come into Gawler, there's the trots or the racetrack on your left, and the road curves around the track, and you go past Vidulis's garden centre, and there's a road that goes up the hill, up sort of into the bush or off into the One Tree Hill area. And it was a gazetted road, and we got onto the tourism centre and got onto the council, and they were fully supportive of us having a mountain bike course there. We got on with Adelaide Mountain Bike Club, and they ran across country on the same days that we ran our events. And the road goes off in a straight line down towards the racetrack. And awesome views there, all out over Gawler, the push up the track. And normally we'd have a table set up not far from the start with an intercom where we'd play music and do commentary as well. And Trav, I think there's video of him on one of yours trying to speak Japanese. So there was always music playing, a bit of commentary, interviewing people as they come up the hill. And again, about style and fun.
It was a lifestyle,
Yeah,
really.
it was.
It was less of a race. It was an event, wasn't it?
Yeah. You don't really get that nowadays. Everyone knew everyone. There was more, I think, probably slightly older than there is today. Today there's a lot of 15-year-olds. Back then, everyone was 17, 18, 19. I was the old guy. I was in my early mid-20s. But it was, a little bit more of a tight group. And I think Inside Line was run by the riders back then, whereas now it's a lot of parents involved. So it's a lot more politically correct now.
Everyone chipped in. Everyone did their bit.
I reckon one of the first events I rode at Kersbrook, we had a Pantech truck with everyone just jammed in the back of the truck as transport. That was about the vintage of those days.
Yeah, good times.
Yeah.
All right, skip back a bit, get back into your schooling. Like you're still in school. You maybe coming to the end of your schooling years. What were you into? Were you playing sports? What subjects were you doing?
Primary school, I was playing soccer. I played soccer up in the Gawler districts for about 13 years. Loved it. Was right into it. Racing BMX a lot back then as well. And that was back in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. And then I pretty much wound up the BMX when I went to high school because I went to boarding school. But still had a BMX and used to do a lot of crazy stuff. Got some Skyway Toughs on an old Road King frame. Had a couple of Subarus and cracked those frames. So I was thrashing it pretty hard back from the early days. And towards the end of high school, I was getting back into motorbikes again. When I first left high school, I played soccer all the way through high school. When I left
your schooling itself, like your academic side of schooling, how did that go down?
Oh, I was a pretty good student. I was in the boarding school till halfway through year 11. You know, my grades were okay. But study, I find it difficult to study. I get bored pretty quickly. Probably got a bit of ADHD going on in there somewhere. Need to slow down a bit every once in a while.
I reckon everyone's got to be like that now. I think everyone's got ADHD then, don't they?
My youngest, he's a lot like me. He's a bit, yeah. And we were talking about it the other day, and he said, Dad, I don't want to go and get assessed for ADHD because I think they're the best people to hang out with. They're more fun.
Yeah.
The people who aren't like going all the time, they're a bit boring.
Yeah, bloody oath.
Yeah. So,
and you finished school? You got to the end of year 12?
Finished high school, went into uni, went into an arts degree, got into about a week before the withdrawal period of the first term, was studying the Earth, greenhouse gases and dinosaurs, maths, physics, all under an arts degree, and pulled out before the middle of the year and thought, man, this is not going anywhere. Being in a medical family, I wanted to go down the medical road, but it's a devotion to be a doctor. I still work in the industry, have done for 25 years, but there's no off time. If you become a doctor, that's it. You're locked in. And ADHD, I can't, stay on one thing. Pulled out of that, hooked up with my first major girlfriend, went overseas, did the backpacking thing around Europe, and then came back and we went into health science, which is the degree that I finished in. So that sort of got to the end of health science. Again, was looking to go into medicine as a post-grad, but at the end of health science, I was cooked on study and I couldn't do any more and got into construction. Dad had a patient who was a builder, and I went round just to do some work because I had nothing to do when I finished uni, and stayed with him for about 6 years. But it was really good because at that stage, was right into mountain bikes, and I'd do contract work and then take a break and just race mountain bikes. And at that stage, I was travelling around the country, racing for Specialised, an Avanti, and I had an old Holden HQ station wagon, and would just go to all the races interstate, or I had a lot of promo going on at that time as well, was involved with Mambo, doing jumps and stuff, and they were some of the best years of my life. Got on TV a few times. I did the X Games a couple of times.
And you went over to the Olympics as well? Were you doing demos over there?
Yep.
Tell us about that.
Nari and I, through the Mambo connection, they had their first Olympic mountain bike event in Sydney in 2000. And we got hooked up to do basically the promo jump show as people entered the course. So about 40,000 people a day walked past us going in and out of the venue. And we took the HQ and my motorbike trailer and set up and just did a big jump show. Marshy did a bit of a trial show as well, jumping on and off the trailer. And we stayed down at Nigel Begg's place at Bondi, up on the top of the hill with our swags. Every day we'd drive out to the Olympic venue. And everyone cleared out of Sydney for the Olympics, so it was dead quiet. The freeways were great. I reckon we had 4 guys in the HQ on the way over and 5 on the way back, because Mad Mikey rode a postie bike to Sydney and knackered his back on the way. And so he hooked a ride with us. 3 in the back seat, Roach and I in the front seat, all the way back with about 15 mountain bikes jammed into the motorbike trailer.
Mad Mike, what an appropriate name, hey?
Where is he now?
Yeah, I don't know. So the Mambo guys, like, how did you meet them? Tell us a bit more about that.
That was the Begg brothers, and I got hooked
Nigel
up.
and Paul. Yep.
Nigel and Paul, rest his soul, old Paul. I got hooked up with them through Trav, actually, because we were doing the sponsored stuff, going to all the going to the national rounds interstate. That's where I met those guys. And we just hit it off, became friends. And, you know, at that point, always for me, I've never been a cross-country rider. It's always been downhill. And coming from motorbikes, and as a kid on BMXs, I love doing jumps. And always jumping over stuff, jumping over kids, jumping over tyres, jumping over gaps. And so it's about having fun. And we styled it up. You know, I learned a bit of BMX back in the day. I was doing a bit of freestyle stuff, quarter pipe work. So we got into doing jump shows with you. Remember we did one of the first Wayvilles, I reckon. One of the, we also, Entertainment Centre.
Monster trucks.
Yeah, I don't think by that Monster Trucks I'd sort of dropped out by then. Might have done one out at Port Gawler, I think.
Yeah, some of Deansy's events as well.
Yeah. But before that kicked off, we did the Fringe show, or we were meant to do the Fringe show in Sydney. And that was before the Olympics. I made a big jump ramp. Roach and I went over to Sydney for about a week, stayed with Begsy, and at the last minute they cancelled the show because of insurance. And then we were going to be down on Bondi, not on the beach, just behind where all of the, what do you call it? That building that's got all the curves on the front down there.
I'm not that familiar.
And we were going to do a jump show there and do some car jumps. He had this old dragster, like one of those Fords with the top ripped off it with the open engine bay.
Yeah.
And we're going to jump over that, but they killed it. And then after that, I did the Summer X Games.
What were you doing there?
Darren Harvey, he was hooked us up to take over. At that stage, I was riding Specialised D8, and we took that over to do basically a promo for the D8, which was going to be on the Summer X Games. So we went out.
That's the Demo 8.
Yeah, the Demo 8.
Demo 8. Is that the heavy one or the not so heavy one?
Weren't all
the Demo 9 was the tank.
No, yeah, but weren't they all heavy back then, though?
Yeah, I think
I reckon that had like 8 inches of travel on the back end with a motocross style geared linkage. Just
like
add
19,
extra weight.
20 kilos or something.
Oh,
like that.
yeah. So we did a bit of a video session on that and promo, and I took it out to the BMX dirt jump and jumped a couple of jumps. And then got into the X Games off the back of that, the Winter X Games. But that was awesome. You know, going over to the Summer X and Winter X Games, just getting a pass to go and hang out at a venue like that with people doing crazy stuff.
You felt like a rock star, didn't you? It's just there's only 20 people in Australia get to do this.
Yeah.
And I'm one of them.
And at the Winter X Games, we got a week-long lift pass as well and free accommodation in Jindabyne. They had Grinspoon, a couple other bands on. And, yeah, we had a really good time there.
That was good fun.
Really good time.
Did you end up coming home broken from that one, or you all right?
I broke myself before the second one, did an AC joint, and look at me now. I've done a shoulder again, had surgery 3 weeks ago. First year, I think I crashed out. Second year, I got a third. So I got some prize money, got some new ski gear that year. And we did try to get off a whole national round, which was going to be quad compressor racing in all the major cities and some of the snow resorts after that, but never happened.
Didn't happen. So your involvement with Club Safari and then the Gawler, what was it, Gawler?
It was Gawler Mountain Bike Club.
Mountain Bike Club.
Yep.
You organised that? Or
I was the inaugural president,
yeah.
El Presidente.
Did that last for long? Is it still going?
We only lasted a couple of years.
Yeah, it was just you guys having fun and to be legal, insurance.
Yeah, we wanted to run an event, and like I said, you know, with a little bit of just laid back, easy style. The race series was called the Easy Jive Series. So it was about just having good fun, getting all our mates together, having a race, and, you know, to take that quad and 6-man racing, because we come from motorbikes and BMX, we get a gate full. We wanted to get a gate full of mountain bikers. And it was, yeah, really good fun.
Yeah.
Getting involved in all of that was, you know, Gawler's a little community. It's a little town. So a bloke that we knew from BMX days, Brian Samble, he was the mayor at that stage. And his son was a couple of years younger than me and got into mountain bikes. And before the mountain bikes, there was a BMX track in Gawler. I raced BMX as a kid as well, on sidecars and on, well, just on your own. Side hacks, I should say. So Pat and I raced together. I pushed, he rode, his older brother rode. We all knew each other in Gawler. And when the mountain bikes came along, after school, we'd all go down to the BMX track, hang out, jump the doubles, make jumps, go down the creek. Then when the mountain bikes came out, same thing happened. I can't remember whether we approached Brian or he approached us, but basically we wanted to make Gawler the mountain biking capital, which, Melrose has really taken that scene now. But being close to Gawler, we had some good creeks and stuff, and they were fully supportive. They gave us money. Rotary came out and catered our events. They gave us cash as well. They just wanted us to put Gawler on the map.
And this is more than 25 years ago, yeah?
Late 90s. Yeah. 98, 99.
Yeah. How far has the sport's come along now? And, I don't know, now you've got all the tourism trails and Riesling trails and Melrose and all of that. But maybe not so much in Gawler itself.
Yeah, Gawler's pretty quiet now.
They used to run, they used to have dirt jump comps at the BMX track there. Like, you'd travel. Like, people would think nothing of travel. Look, there's an event there. That's what we'll go and do.
You remember Dwayne and all the boys would go up to Gawler. There was a big jump down by the creek, a transition jump. Pat and I built that on our mountain bikes, and it was behind my place, just down through a paddock next to the creek.
We were speaking to Dwayne, and we're going, where did it come from? Like, because they were saying they kind of copied it off of Dingley Dell, like a roll into it just had to be a right land formation, and they don't occur everywhere.
Well, initially at that stage, we had it as an area that went down towards the creek, and there was a bit of a sort of a gully heading towards the creek, and we used that gully sideways as a kicker. So that was where you could get a real big, for like a knack-knack, or like a can and just throw the back end out. And then just behind that was a railway line, and we made a track that went down to the railway line as well. I think on one of your vids there's a bit of a session of us cruising next to the railway line and then jumping over the railway line. Yes. Well, we did take footage of that. I don't know which video I got in.
I do remember that. Like, you're jumping
Yep, along next to the train line and then jump over the train line and down into the gully.
A lot of stuff didn't always make it into the videos, like for whatever reason, but there's so much stuff that didn't make it. And all of those things, hopefully I get to open them up and we can look at that again.
I think back to one of my favourite times of doing video with you was at Wollonga. Stevie Wright, our friend who's the Channel 9 cameraman, came out and wanted to do footage for Channel 9. And you were doing all that footage at the bottom. Actually, it was a year before that when I broke the bottom bracket on that massive canyon jump at the bottom on a hardtail.
That kind of, it was a rolly hump, that straight, like you come around the fast right-hand turn, and like just a little mound of dirt that just went over it like a little crater.
Someone
in the
had
ground.
kicked a little bit of a dirt over where there was basically a small quarry where they'd been digging rubble out of. You came off the main hill down, and then there was a long pedally section round that right-hander and the jump over the canyon.
You don't get it right, you're landing to another lip. So you've got to get over that hole.
And the week before, we'd been out there practicing with Trav, and he had a GT boomerang. And I lined this thing up 3 or 4 times, and I was ready to jump it. And I said, Trav, I can make this, but I want full suspension to do it. And he said, yeah, use my bike. So I took the boomerang and launched it, and then went, yeah, no worries, I'll do it on the hardtail. So I started whacking that on the hardtail.
That was good times. Like, people were just throwing. There was, hardtail was its own category back then because you didn't have the money for the full suspension, but you could still ride kind of just as hard.
Well, actually, I should rephrase that. That was a full rigid, and it had cantilever brakes.
Yeah.
But what do you need brakes for? It's only 2 speeds, on and off.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Wear the shoe out, jab into the back tyre. Yeah, so school, bikes, school. I lived for bikes for a long time, and building was really just a way to fund bikes. I was having a great time. If I look back now, most of my 20s, up until 26-ish, was just funding bike lifestyle. The sport was changing a lot at that stage. Bike technology was really coming up. We were going from things like Whitlock's DB, that Diamondback that he had, that was the bike to have, and it had like 3 inches rear suspension and probably 1.5 on the front. The San An was like next level crazy with disc brakes, and I was riding a full rigid. And then I got onto a couple of different bikes, the Avantis, those box frame things. Norco had a very similar frame that had that bottom tube that connected the monocoque section. And again, I think we had V-brakes then. I raced top 20 at Mount Beauty and came 17th, and I was the only one with V-brakes against a full disc brake field.
And then the transition went to disc brakes, somewhere in there that really, if you're riding a mountain bike down a hill, a rim brake is no longer appropriate.
Yeah.
You have to have disc brakes.
Yep.
You know,
Or
because you're going to buckle your wheels.
Yeah, yeah. And then you get that. It's like ABS, that modulation in the brake lever.
Yeah.
And I was always, because I grew up on BMX as a kid, and we were influenced heavily by the US back then because that's where BMX came from, we all ran reverse brakes. So instead of having a rear brake on the left, I ran the rear brake on the right. Because on a BMX, if you were racing, you wouldn't run a front brake. You'd only really run a front brake if you had a freestyle bike.
So that's your brake.
And for me, I found like having ridden Modies, when you come into a corner, you jam the back brake on, slide the back end into a corner, and then dump the gas. And that's called squaring off a turn rather than apexing or rolling it. And I sort of did that with the rear brake on a BMX. So you'd sort of square the corner by using the rear brake. And then the gas was you coming out of the corner, unfortunately. So I still, on some of my bikes, I still run a right rear brake. I can ride with the left rear, but it takes me a while to get used to it. So if I do a downhill,
changing bikes
on the first few corners, it'll be with the front brake getting grabbed when you're trying to grab the rear.
I've heard stories of, overseas they ride brakes reversed, and they'll come to Australia, and you're going to the pub for a quick drink or whatever, and you just jam on the brake and it's the wrong one and you're over the bars because brakes are backwards.
I've had heaps of people do that on my bike.
Yeah.
They'll have a ride and I'll just say, be careful, rear brake on the right, and they'll jam a whole front and go down.
Messes with your head.
Yeah, yeah.
Tell us a bit more about your family. Mum, Dad, they still around?
Yeah, Mum and Dad are still around. Dad's 84. He's a GP, still working 2 or 3 days a week. He's picked up a buying old military vehicles habit, so he's got to keep working to pay for that. He's got an old Willys Jeep, like MASH, and the British version of that called an Austin Champ, and also a Parenti, which is sort of the current model Army Jeep with the camo top, and he loves going camping in those and cruising around. Mum's a nurse. She used to be his practice manager and practice nurse in the surgery. My oldest sister was a hairdresser. She's now over in the Middle East with her husband. He's in defence. My second sister's a podiatrist, went on and did a PhD in psych. She's currently doing a placement in Ireland looking at PTSD treatments in Defence Forces. And then there's my next brother. There's 4 kids. He's a Qantas pilot based out of Canberra. So we're all still around. We're all still a happy family. We all still get along.
Mum and Dad did something right. That sounds like they did pretty good for 4 good kids like that.
Yeah, well, I never had grandparents. On Dad's side, my grandfather died when he was 4. Grandmother died when he was 21. My mum's mum died when she was really young. Her dad died when she was about 13. She came out to Australia when she was 16 on her own and had a sister out here, but they were a bit distance because she grew up with aunts and got spread around. So, not having grandparents has been a weird thing. Everyone else I know's got stories, memories of their grandparents. Never had that.
Yeah, our grandparents are the best. I love my grandparents on both sides of the family. Special people. You're not trying to answer to them. They're just hopefully just trying to do the best by you. Give your grandkids lollies and all the rest of it,
Yeah, I had a pretty good childhood. My parents were great. They supported me really well and gave me a good education, pushed me out the door. And somehow I'm probably doing okay. I'm pretty happy.
It sounds like all 4 of you have done pretty well.
Yeah. Look, we talked about this recently with the new motto of do what you love what you do. And the older I get, the more happiness becomes a part of your planning and what you're looking for. I'm in my early 50s now. I've got 3 kids. My partner's got 3 kids. We're getting married next year. We're just looking at how can we spend more time on us and our happiness rather than chasing the almighty dollar. At the moment, I've got a bung shoulder. Had surgery 3 weeks ago, so my sleep has been horrible. Waking up many times a night. Can only sleep on my left, get a sore hip. I was up at 3:30 this morning, and I noticed that Jo... I'm snoring a bit because I'm overweight. I'm keeping her awake. And I noticed that I've been waking her up in the night. She's working flat out at the moment. And I thought, I'll let her have a sleep. I'll get up and go and sit in the lounge. So at 3:30 this morning, I went out to the lounge and I watched a video by James Packer that was done on 7 and they were talking about mental illness, and he was saying that, I don't wish mental illness on anyone, but I'd way prefer to be rich and have to cope with mental illness than be poor and try and cope with mental illness. And I can see that, but we've all got to deal with our own selves in whatever you dealt with and whatever you played with. And, my parents have really been fantastic and supported me and my craziness too.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And so what do you do with yourself nowadays? What does Angus Graham do in 2024?
Backstory to that, finished uni in health science, majored in pharmacology and medical microbiology and immunology. So after I finished that, I went into construction and I was pretty lost on where I wanted to go. Initially, it was head into postgrad med. I'm really interested in medical stuff. I spent a lot of my youth sitting in the back of the surgery, reading all the medical journals and just brushing up on things like skin cancer and, cholesterol.
All that fun stuff. Yeah,
cholesterol.
Everyone does that.
And whatever. And so having got into construction, always pulled things apart, like making things, love, engineering, designing, that kind of stuff. So construction was really good. I worked for a general builder and we did everything from site layout, concrete, steel work, but really specialised in cool room panel. So we did a lot of animal husbandry, building chicken sheds, pig sheds, cool rooms, massive warehouse freezers, and I really liked it. But at the same time racing bikes, at that stage I broke a few bones. I separated an AC joint at the Nationals at Canberra, broke a finger on a modi, broke a metacarpal racing Mount Beauty at Big Hill. 10-minute downhill, wasn't that awesome? When are they going to bring that back? And after breaking all those bones, I did the AC joint. And we were building a big potato processing plant at Nildotty up on the river. And I was riding my pushy from the Swan Hill pub where we were living out the back for 6 weeks into the work site, which is about 5 or 6 Ks, and I'd ride out there each day trying to get myself ready for the Winter X Games. And I basically got to the Winter X Games and said, well, look, broken. It's probably now time to get serious about getting a real job, and if I have a big off on this shoulder, I could really hurt myself properly. And I got through it relatively unscathed by that stage. The guys coming up behind me were really pushing the boundary, doing some massive, crazy stuff. I mean, look at me now. I'm injured again, and this is from a motorbike. I didn't want to go that far. I enjoyed it, but I didn't need to come out of it broken. Having a medical background, I knew what I could do and potentially hurt myself. And who are the guys? Who was the bloke in the hills here who rode into the quarry? Matt the Bastard.
Beaumont death jumps or?
Was riding at night up there and rode off the edge of the quarry and broke his neck. I think he came back, but he wasn't ever the same. And a few other people who popped bones out through the skin, like a broken elbow. They're the kind of things that you'll feel that for the rest of your life.
Yeah, there's some, I was chatting with Rowan, there's some long-term consequences to injuries, but at the time you just don't think of that. You're just going, I just want to do it. And the goal is not to crash.
Well, 51, still feel the same.
The goal is to make it and do the thing. But do you stop yourself and you do nothing and then, I'm safe forever? Or do you go, look, it's worth wrecking myself?
Yeah.
You can't just sit on the couch forever. I don't know. I'd go, you can't.
In my first marriage, that happened to me. All the bikes went away and I did nothing. And I went stale.
And you're safe. And everything's nice.
Everything was good.
And all that, but there's no real excitement. There's no real buzz. There's no...
And then when I got together with Jo, one of the first things she said to me is, buy a bike. That's who you are. You need to get on a bike again. And at that stage, it was Modi's. So I got into racing enduros, did the road trial series, which is awesome. That's how I did this one, actually as a sweep rider for the 24.
You're not even racing.
Not even racing.
Crashing while you're asleep. God.
Well, I didn't come off. Does that count?
What did you do?
I've got 10 acres up at Crafers West now. We've got a bit of a sheep farming operation going on. We're share farming for 3 or 4 farms around us so we can keep the grass down because, of course, Adelaide Hills bushfire risk is really bad.
Smart move.
No one was doing anything up there. There's plenty of weeds, blackberries and stuff all over the place. And I love having my own lamb at home. So I was out putting up an electric fence to section off a new paddock and hit a rock in the grass. Didn't come off, but it really deflected the front wheel and wrenched my shoulder, and it was quite sore for probably a couple of months leading into the 24-hour race. In that time, I rode a 6-hour event. No worries, it was all good. But leading up to the 24, I knew at that stage I couldn't ride that event. I'd ridden it twice before in 2015 and 2016 and finished, did really well. But I'm getting old. I'm getting fat and lazy. Haven't done any training. Thought, no, I'll give it a miss this year. But wanted to ride it. So there's about a 200K loop and you do 4 laps over 24 hours. Takes 6 hours to do a lap. Do the first lap, 40-minute dinner break. Second lap, 20-minute midnight break. Third lap, 40-minute breakfast break. And then finish it. So it's a solo event, Ironman the whole way. But what I did was I went out before the start in the morning on the Saturday with about 5 guys, and we pre-rode the track and we check all the track markers to make sure it's all good. And on about the 8th section out of 12, hit another rock in the grass, deflected the front wheel. And I've torn the subscapularis muscle off the front of my shoulder, which is really painful at the time. I hit the rock and it was probably a 15 out of 10 pain scale. But 3/4 of the way around the track, and I could sort of still hang on to the bars. And
what are you going
the
to do?
boys said, oh, you know, you could probably ride back to Maine from here. I thought, nah, look, it's only 4 sections. I'll just sit down and take it easy.
Yeah, smart move.
So I rode through the rest of the event.
No.
Got to the end, could hardly load my bike on my own. Had an MRI about 3 days later and found that 2/3 of the muscle was torn off and retracted about 20 mil. Straight away, had to book in for the surgery. But 2 weeks after that, I went to Fiji for 18 days. So I had to wait like 6 weeks until I could have the surgery. And at the time, the surgeon said to me, you know, you've done a good job. You've actually ripped the whole thing off. So in that 6 weeks of putting a roof on my shed, which I, you know, shouldn't have done, and then snorkeling all the way around Fiji, I finished it off. So 3 weeks ago, on Monday, just gone, well, 3 weeks, 3 days now, I had that surgery done, had the muscle reattached, 2 rows of screws put in there to hold it down, and because it goes over where my biceps goes, they had to cut my biceps tendon as well and move that down lower and drill a hole and put it through the back. So it's about 4 months with nothing heavier than a coffee cup in my hand, and I'm not allowed to move my hand further than there, which is driving me mental, sitting at home on the couch.
So when they tell you, you go to the doctors, you've hurt yourself, you go to the doctor, what have I done? What are you going to do to fix it? And they say, oh, we're going to pin and cut and do that. How does that make you feel? Like, how do you, when you leave his room after that conversation, what are you thinking?
Well, I'm in a unique situation in that this particular surgeon, I know him when I went to school with, I know him well. I went to school with him. And when he was a trainee, I used to be his rep, and I sold him all the things that he used in my shoulder. So I would go and teach him how to do this operation. So as soon as I did the injury, I had a rough idea of what I'd done anatomically. I went and saw my dad, who was working at the 24, and we had a discussion. He did a few tests, and we both went, it's probably this. And then basically said, well, I need to have a scan. Between he and I, we workshopped it. And by about 3 days later, it hadn't improved. So I had the scan and I knew what I'd done and I knew what I was in for. So for me to walk in there, it's like, yep, I know. Okay, when can we book it? There wasn't any question about what we were doing. It was when we were doing it. Having done this shoulder before, ripping the AC off, I was actually pretty happy with what I'd done because I pulled the muscle off the front. There's 2 more at the top that make up your rotator cuff. And old people have those repaired. And I hadn't torn those off. So doing a lot of building work, working on farming, I just wanted to make sure I still was going to come out of it functional and could keep doing the things I want to do. One of the first things I said when I came out of surgery was, so do I have to sell my motorbike now? And he said to me, well, I'm not your wife. So
well,
am I going back to riding again? Oh, shh.
You're only what, in your early 50s?
Yeah.
Dean and the other boys, they do high country rides. There's guys in their 70s doing the ride. You just got to ride to your limits, you know? Understand what you can do and watch the rocks in the long grass.
But I've been involved with the Gawler Motorbike Club for a long time, and that's a lot of old guys really broken. And if they're not riding, they're still around the scene. You know, they're helping out and doing stuff.
It's their life.
Yeah.
It's in your blood.
And they're farmers. It's either riding bikes. And at the moment, for me, this year, it was justifiable. You know, look, I'm a farmer. I ride a bike on the farm. I'm going to do this to keep my skills up.
No pretense.
So I've still got my race bike, KTM 300 EXE two-stroke, last of the big two-strokes. I've always liked two-strokes, that little bit more of a power punch. They roll on more into the turns with the four-strokes. When you back off, the back wheel almost locks up with the engine braking. You can rebuild a two-stroke in your shed in half an hour. There's no timing chain. It's cheaper to rebuild. They make better noise. Prior to this, my youngest got into mountain bikes. Of course, you know, I'd talked mountain bikes all the way, showed them the promo vids, showed them the Volatile Revisioned vids. And he's a lot like me, loved bikes. So he went out and started racing downhill with Inside Line. And I'd go out to the events and support, was working for the club a bit, doing a bit of commentary at some of the races. And I thought, well, look, this is really cool. I'm going to come out and have another go. I've got a couple of old bikes in the shed, a Jamis. When he first started, I'd take out the Jamis Julie and we'd go and do a bit of training together, and that was good fun. And I had an old big hit with a 24-inch rear, one that I did a deal with Trav when I fitted out one of the JT Cycles shops.
Imagine riding that today.
Well, we did, like 3 years ago. I raced it downhill in, remember where at Wollonga we did the vintage round?
Yeah.
Yep, I raced it in that.
Was it just odd?
Yeah, and then the young fella raced it, flipped it at Wollonga and hit the back chainstay on a rock and bent it and broke it. And I reckon that was in practice. So I just got a bit of aluminium angle, put it down over it and then put tape over it to hold it. And there was a little bit of inspection and they're going, I didn't see what was under that tape. It's okay. Just ride it.
Yeah.
And then I went and bought a V10 Santa Cruz, secondhand, awesome bike, so nice to ride. But around that time, this is probably 4 years ago, I started to get a lot of sharp nerve pain down my left hand. And whenever I came into a big drop or a big technical section, if I'd brace, I'd get a shooting electrical pain down my left arm to the point where I just couldn't ride. And I was racing in A grade and just trying to get 2 runs, essentially, having a good time. Was doing okay, was just outside the top 20, and this is coming back at, 49, 50, no practice or anything, just going for a ride. But the pain got really bad. So at that stage, I sold the bike and I'd just go and do the commentary while the young fella rode. And that basically stopped me riding for 18 months, 2 years, riding anything. I wasn't really even riding my motorbike. And because I'm involved in the surgical side of this, I sell the implants that go in for all of that. I knew exactly what I was in for. And the risks of injury after having that surgery, the limit of what it can do, I was not overly wanting to go down that road and crossing my fingers that it might come good. My dad had very similar pain in his mid-70s. I sent him to one of my neurosurgical contacts and the guy said, don't do anything, just wait. And he's resolved. And he kept telling me that. Don't do anything, just wait. But after...
at 70, that's okay. Yeah, I can wait at 70.
Yeah.
But at 50, I don't know if I could wait.
Yeah. And so I waited and it wasn't getting better. And even as recently as late last year, I was saying to him, look, I think it's time. I'm going to have to go and have the scan. I think we're going to have to take the next step. And I left it. And then in the last 6 months, it's come good. I'm almost back to normal.
Yeah.
And I think it came from getting off the mountain bikes. I find that the mountain bike riding position, you're tucked a lot lower with the neck bent like that, and that's squeezing that nerve at the back. Whereas on a dirt bike, you're a bit more upright. Yeah. And I went out at the start of this year and I bought a brand new helmet, super lightweight. It's like 900 grams compared to my other one, which is like 1.3 kilo. And that lighter weight made a lot of difference with
your head
whippy as well.
Yeah, cool. All right, go to the early days of Inside Line. Not so much the racing, but some of the people, the personalities.
One of the first guys I met was Greggy Morrison. He was doing the track builds mainly back then, and he worked at ADI, Adelaide Diesel Imports, so he would get trucks from there that we used as transport, which I think was one of those Pantex, with a trailer on the back. Jam 20 bikes in the trailer, 20 guys in the back of the truck, and up the hill you go. And, of course, Trav Pack, the big Trav man, Dazzle, Marshy, you, Dan Cora, Whitlock, Potsy. I mean, the list goes on. And it wasn't just about the racing. Deansy, you mentioned there, the parties. Man. Woo.
Black Flies parties.
Good fun.
That was
at Magoo's on North Terrace there.
Yeah, it's good fun.
We need to do some more of those. They were good fun.
I don't know if you'd be able to do that stuff anymore. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know the right people.
No.
But again, the scene is so different now. You know, back then, the scene, we all knew each other, and we were like hanging out with each other, whether it's riding or whether it's whatever. We didn't have kids at that stage. Just like hanging out.
There was that bit of inter-store rivalry. You know, you had Standish Cycles,
Yes.
JT Cycles. Well, I mean, Megabike came later, didn't they?
It was never probably not the boys, not the riders, and even the bosses. All the bosses were all pretty nice people. It was an industry. You know, Standish had 3 shops, JT's had 3 shops, Tracks, Bicycle Express.
A friendly competition.
There was only a few shops. There wasn't that many, but they had a number of branches.
And everyone had their followers. You know, you had all the dudes with the Standish top on, all the dudes with the JT tops on.
Yeah. It was a big team spirit. It was. You were SCU, you were they were the days of you got a Lycra shirt, you're proud to have
no
that.
Lycra, it's all. No Lycra.
Well, they did well. They Lycra or whatever it was. Not Lycra pants.
Oh, no, not Lycra for us.
No,
they could wear the Lycra. But Club
did.
Safari and Volatile, we didn't wear.
No, we didn't wear the Lycra. But for them, you know, that's why we were the polar opposites. You know, we were the yin to their yang.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, they had the Lycra. We're doing Hawaiian shirts and fairy pants.
Speaking of personalities, one of the best trips or things that I ever did with mountain bikes was the 1996 World Cup in Cairns. We had a couple of guys from Adelaide go up there to race, and a whole crew went up to support it.
Who were those couple of guys?
Wasn't it Matt the Bastard, and was it Whitlock?
I think it was Matt the Bastard. Was it Benny A?
Yeah, Benny A. Who had the who had the Cannondale? Someone took a Cannondale up there, and the race team cracked a frame, and they hit up one of the Adelaide guys and said, I think he didn't qualify, so they said, "Can we borrow your frame?" And they used his frame on the team downhill bike, and at the end they just gave him all the sweet parts off it. But Pat and I got onto the local paper in Gawler called the Bunyip Press, and we said to the guy who owned it at the time, "Look, the World Cup is up in Cairns, and we want to go as press." Pat was into photography, had his camera, and I like talking shit, so we managed to get him to sign off on us being press. So we put in our applications. And one of the other guys from Gawler, Mark Seal, was going up as a volunteer as a flaggy. So we all teed up and went up together. At that stage, I was trying to get into the Air Force. So every Qantas flight we took, and we flew like Adelaide, Melbourne, Melbourne, Sydney, Sydney, Brisbane, Brisbane, Cairns, I'd get onto the hostie and say, "Oh, look, I'm trying to get into the Air Force. Can we go and sit in the cockpit?" When you're allowed in there. So Pat and I would sit at the back and we'd eat our lunch, and they'd go, "Okay, up you come." And we'd go and sit in the cockpit for the landing into each city. And we got in there and got our press passes. So we had, the fluoro vest.
You used your press passes to get into the front of the aeroplane? Or
that was another scam.
Okay.
Club Safari, we basically talk our way in anywhere. We'd always just use it. "Oh, yeah, no, we're Club Safari. We're here to organise this." And we'd walk into events and get in for free, and just as promo.
Yeah.
We did, for example, we did that trip to Hotham, which was one of the first snow vids, and I rang you up and said, "Hey, we're going to Hotham. Do you want us to do some video for Volatile Visions?"
Yeah.
There you go.
That was the first, that was before the Winter X Games.
I was way before.
You guys riding on the snow?
We basically rang the mountain there and said, "Oh, look, we're coming up for Volatile Visions to do a video. This is going to go all around the place. Can you help us out?" And they're like, yeah, no worries. Just come out one morning at 8 before the lifts open, and we'll get a couple of skidoos and we'll tow you up and down the hill and we'll look after you. That was wicked. And
I got footage of that. I'll hopefully be able to throw that over.
Yeah, that was an awesome trip. We had so much fun. I can't remember if they gave us a lift ticket or something as well. They looked after us.
Just through conversation and just a bit of gift of the gab.
Yep, just having a chat. People want to do things, and you've just got to have a conversation with someone. "I can help you out. What can I do?" And so we got over to where was I lost in that story prior to that? 96 at the Worlds. So we had a full press pass, and as part of the lead up to that, we got free bungee jumping, free tours around the place, and we had access to the big press tent. So there's you could sit on your laptop and send your messages around the world or whatever for each story you were doing. And we just walk up and down the track taking photos. And Diamondback were massive. They had that DB that Whitlock was riding then, they had a big business. And at the bottom of the track in Cairns, they put a full fiberglass swimming pool in there with a DJ and a big tent with all their bikes in it and beers and everything. And with our press passes, we had access. So every day after riding, we'd go down there and drink beers before we'd ride our bikes back out to Yorkie's Knob. And that was just, I'd love to do that again. That was awesome.
It's just the atmosphere, that party, the good time vibe, you know. Good time vibe. I'm looking at your cap there. It says good time dad. Like, where's the...
Well,
what's
that? When I first had kids, unfortunately, that didn't work out, my first marriage, and I got divorced, and I was accused once of being a good time dad because I was just there for the fun and not, doing the hard yards. So I didn't quite agree with that. So I decided, well, why don't we make something of it? So we started doing Good Time Dad.
I got one here.
There's a lot of fathers out there who, through broken relationships, don't get access to their kids, don't get to spend quality time with them. I'm lucky that I get 50-50 half time with my kids. That was really important to me, to be part of their life and be part of raising them so that they know what my values are and who I am. And a lot of dads don't get that. And this was sort of part of that as well, to support dads that don't get the ability to have quality time with their kids. We had a lot of plans to do things like, to run a weekend where you could bring your kids up to the farm and they could shoot a 22, throw stones at a dam, have a ride around on a motorbike, or do some kind of things that you like to do with your dad, go camping and do blokey stuff. And, potentially even there, have some sessions where you can get dads together and talk about coping mechanisms, ways that you can play a better role in your kids' lives and help people talk stuff out. People don't always want you to solve their problems. They just need to offload, and they need someone to listen to them. And that's sort of part of that as well. I would like to take that up and do more with it, but our lives are just so busy at the moment. My youngest is just got his learner's permit. So pretty soon the kids are going to be self-reliant completely. And we're still building up the farm, trying to make things work there. But when time becomes more available to us...
You might find you get that. I'm finding that now as you're getting a bit older, the kids are growing up, you get maybe a bit of that time to do a little passion project.
Yeah, when you can slot something in it. And, I with the Gawler Mountain Bike Club and other things, I've put my time in and helped a lot of things out. I'm still helping out the club where I can, inside line. And it might just be commentary, but I think everyone likes our commentary when they come out to the events. Joe, my fiance, Joe and I, she comes out to the races with me, and she's basically the numbers lady. She has a little cue card of who's riding and who's coming next, and she whispers into my ears and tells me, okay, so the next rider is Zolly, and he's sponsored by Volatile Revisioned, and he came third at the last Nationals in old man's class. So then I'll get on the mic and call that out. Particularly the parents and the older people, they'll come up to us afterwards and say, that's really awesome. You can tell us who's coming next. We know what's going on. And I'll crap on about my experience about what the bikes are like. So, about the suspension, about the pedals, about the tyres, about the brakes. So in the gaps, I can just fill in or interview people.
Talk shit.
Grabbed you a few times. I'll go out to the pits and interview people, ask them what the track's like, what their favourite thing was, what their best result is, and just talk shit.
Yeah.
I love it. It's great fun.
How's the scene? Like, okay, you're in the scene, you're involved in the mountain bike scene today, this last year, but you're involved 25. It's 30 years. The Inside Line Mountain Bike Club's coming up. I'm hopefully getting Jamie on here pretty soon for a chat. How different is it? Tell us what it was like. Tell us, how did you have timing? How did you have transport? What were the categories like back then? How many categories did we have?
Oh, well, was there 3 categories for men and that was it? And we were lucky if we had 2 or 3 women out there. And the juniors were a very small class, very, very small class. It was elite men and B grade and sport. And then what was C grade called? It was probably
elite, maybe sport, maybe I don't know if they even had veterans, because at the time
there wasn't any veterans.
There was no one older,
and anyone who was older was either going
initially
into sport or into elite.
Yeah, and then a few more categories, then underage groups, and even at the first, I don't even know if they would have had women's. I don't know if there was a few girls riding early.
Oh, I can think of 2 or 3. Mel, Greg Morrison's missus.
Yes.
She was quick. I think she,
Beck rode.
yeah.
In the early days.
When did Carol come out?
Carol and Darren were riding right from the get-go.
Yeah.
Riding or racing, they're always a part of it. But there was a few. Beck Ormsby. Well, I'm trying to think of some of the names. Yeah, it'd be good to,
Has it changed? Well, back then the riders were the club, and now I think it's more so the riders' parents are the club. And so it's a lot more organised now, but there's a lot more pressure. When my young fella was riding, that was a couple of years ago, they'd book out. Entries would open, and 2 hours later, it's booked. It's just gone. And back then, it wasn't quite that bad. There was pretty much room for everyone back then, I think. Now, there's been discussion in the last few years about limiting it to top 20 qualifiers go through in elite. I was riding elite because I got 2 rides. If you rode sport, you only got 1 run.
Yeah, it seems like that during that 15, 16-year-old category is the big one. I don't know, maybe there's room for something else that's separate to elite. Because that's almost a whole field worth of, back in the day, the number of people in the under-16s would have probably filled the whole weekend's event. 50 kids or whatever. That might have been 50 riders back in the day. So maybe they, you race the Saturday and then the elites and bring it back to just a few categories, maybe. Who knows?
I'm not sure. There's so much pressure on it. What would I like to see in the sport? I'd like to see some more televising. That's what we really tried to get off the ground back in the day with Harvey, Darren. But there is definitely space for mountain biking to become a televised series. And that's what we were trying to get off the ground. But I think you really have to have compressor racing, 4 guys to have more action. I like watching the downhill, but you want bar
put
baiting.
Cameras on the hills, like the track's 3 minute low. There's you to get the good corner. You got to get access to a good camera to sit on that rocky outcrop to get that view. You just can't get that. So
look at the Red Bull stuff now.
Yeah, it's short, sharp, and shiny like slalom events.
Yeah,
short like what we looked at trying to do something down Montefiore Hill.
Way
back there.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Now they put that as a car park when they have events on. It's a car park. So maybe they could cut a couple of ruts down the hill.
Well, what we actually originally did was we got Les Burdett on board, who's the groundskeeper for the Oval, and we said, look, the way we're going to set this up is we'll bring all this topsoil in and we'll top dress over the grass, and then we'll use that as top dress afterwards. And he basically vouched for us that we were going to improve the turf when we were finished. We were going to improve the turf when we were finished. I reckon it's still got legs. And what I keep fantasising about every year is we just need to tie it up with the TDU, Tour Down Under, and have it as the Saturday night event. So, they have their criterion in the city, and then afterwards everyone goes down. When they had their crit and they would do Montefiore Hill as the climb? Yeah. You imagine having the quad compressor set up there as well.
Lights at night.
Sponsored by Coopers with a big fence all the way around and a Coopers tent at the top.
Yeah, I don't know, we used to put the sport in front of people back then, like the general public. Like mountain bikers could see the sport. We got to see us at the downhill or whatever. But when you got to bring it to a closed environment and bring it into the general public, that was always like the demos, the Tour Down Unders. They'd run a dirt jump comp. We'd run a trials demo. The general public gets to see mountain bike and mountain biking.
You just wanted to overflow and show people. I remember those. It's like, let's give them as much as we can give them and try and get them interested.
And that's where the trials and just a box jump, a couple of small things, didn't take up too much space, but you can see what talented people can do.
You were asking about history and, sport for me as a kid. Just on a Saturday or after school, getting on your bike with a few mates and going to make a jump, be it a plank on a few bricks or, in the Gawler River, we had a quarter pipe we made in the dry creek bed or the track that came out to be the BMX guys jump. It was so much fun. You just go out there and ride until the sun went down and you got to be home when the streetlights turn on.
Good times being a kid back then, huh?
So, I reckon it's still got legs to get an event going there. It's just we need to find some young people to fill our boots and go on. And
well, it's all the red tape and all the
Yeah.
so much problem. Like again, we tried to do stuff back then, and it was still difficult, but a lot easier, I imagine, than what it would be now.
You look at Mount Lofty tracks, mattress track. At the top of Green Hill Road, what's that track where we're down to the end of the car park, up Green Hill, turn
Into
left.
Horse
Knolls. With that was Horse Knolls. I haven't ridden it for so long. Last time I rode it, it was fully overgrown. That would make a World Cup standard downhill. You could get an STA bus and put a bike rack on the front like they do in Europe and transport people on essentially bitumen to the start line.
That's a good hill.
That would be a awesome event.
Totally illegal, of course, I think.
Oh, I
don't know. I'm not sure.
I only ever walked it, Zol.
Yeah,
Never rode it. I only ever walked it.
But it'd be good. Yeah. But to be able to, but again, logistically.
Yeah.
Where do you put the tent and the marshalling and the car parking and all the rest of it? Yeah.
There's room at the bottom. We can make anything happen.
Well, I think Jamie's talking about this year the Inside Line 30-year anniversary. They're looking to do something small, going back to maybe just a little slalom or something like that at Wollonga. I think he's saying just something small, like not a race to be racing, just a race for fun. Like it used to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, the Gawler track's now a road, and they said it was never going to become a road. So that jumps are all gone.
Yeah. Other Inside Line personality or mountain bike personality, it doesn't have to be Inside Line. Like, who are some of the personalities that friends that you attached yourself to or you aligned yourself a little bit more with? All right.
We on?
Batteries are going flat. Cameras are going flat, but we're going to keep going for a bit. We've still got a bit working. You're working.
Personalities?
We were speaking about personalities, yeah.
I was pretty heavily involved with JT Cycles. They sponsored us as Club Safari Trav did, back in the early days. And at that stage, because I was in building, I used to do the shop fit outs for JT Cycles. So there was a lot of people there, a lot of guys who were just riding, C grade, just buying all their stuff because they got supported by the shop. Speaking of personalities, Club Krusty. I'll call them our sister club as Club Safari. Old Moosey there. They used to shop at what we called the Big Blue Supermarket, and that was the RAF base because they had access to all the tents and all the stuff. So a few events. Remember Mount Crawford? We went and camped up there. They had the big army tent.
Yeah.
We all stayed the night.
Spray painted Krusty on the roof or the sides, whatever
it
was.
Got stuck into the beers that night. Cooper's Greens, of course. Pretty crusty the next day. Couple of blokes who came up there as well, not part of either Club Krusty or Club Safari, but, good guys. Found some, thought they'd go and find some mushrooms that night, some funny mushrooms. And we're riding around in the middle of the night. One of the guys was on a brand new bike with massive triple clamp forks, had a head on with someone else, tore the fork staunch and dumped all the oil out on the ground.
That's a bad trip.
That's a bad trip. I'll just...
You got grab that.
One. Hello, this is Angus. As part of my job, unfortunately, my phone is on 24/7, 365, and it's been like that for close to 20 years.
I like turning my phone. I like saying, no, I'm not here.
I get middle of the night phone calls. I have to go into the hospital for pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah, well, you got a responsibility, so that's understandable.
No,
and good
no responsibility.
On you well, if I needed a pin for a socket for my arm, I'd want it there as quick as I can.
Personalities, Pato, back when he was club pres and state champ, and then track building. Pato's always good to talk to. The track cycles crew, of course. Marshy, Dazzle, yourself, the crazy trial stuff. Who else was there?
What's your earliest memories of Inside Line Mountain Bike Club? Like, how did you come into their events? We spoke a little bit about it before, but
so Pat and I used to race BMX, and he comes from a big cycling family. He runs Ride International now over in Europe. He when I went to high school, I got out of the BMX scene because of being at boarding school, and he kept riding. He got a mountain bike, got a really nice Diamondback mountain bike, and at that stage, he got into Inside Line a bit earlier than I did. And then I went out and bought that Diamondback Apex, and he said, well, come out to the races. And that was my first introduction, which was that photo of me going out to Marble Hill. I think I just sold my RMX 250 and was desperate to have something to ride around on, so I got the Diamondback.
And that's where they did a 2-track race.
Yeah, and that's the only time I've seen Inside Line do that.
Yeah, they kind of, one went high, stayed over the hill, and one dropped down through the guts.
And I don't know if it was combined time
I think it was something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a good race format. I really like that. Gives you that option to, at least get one good time out.
This one suits my skill. I'm happy to jump the thing, or I'm fast around corners.
I mean, clearly we had a much smaller field back then, so you could do 2 tracks in one day. With the fields now, you can barely get through all the fields in one go.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see the numbers from back then.
Jamie Foll actually sent me the results from 1997 or 96 on an SMS yesterday.
Yeah, he's been getting out some of the old adrenalines and the old pictures. I've got a heap stashed away as well. So in time, I've got heaps of old stuff to look at. There's all the results, all the information. It's all at our fingertips.
And all the videos, of course.
Yeah, all that too.
Yeah, look, the early days, I was just having fun. And each week it was like, what can we do crazier than last week? Let's do the afro. Let's do the shark fin. And then we started doing the clothing, and I had this little sort of tent that had mozzie mesh all around the sides, and we'd set that up at the tracks and sell all the T-shirts and have a few beers, of course. And then when Trav sort of got on board, and we were just happy to do crazy stuff to get attention, essentially. And so that's where we started getting sponsorship. We got some Oakley, Specialized, Fox, JT, just travel around the country and have fun.
And what does that sponsorship mean?
What does sponsorship mean? Yeah. Okay. So I got a loan bike or 2, which had to give back at the end. Riding gear, so shorts, pants, top, if you want to wear Lycra. I think I got 1 helmet, a Specialized BMX helmet, which is up in the shed as a backup now still. Goggles, sunnies, maybe a bit of petrol money. But you paid all your own accommodation. Oh, we got tyres too, new sets of tyres quite regularly. That was pretty cool. And Specialized tyres, they were good.
And that was as good as a guy like that. We are sponsored. We are the fucking shit.
Oh, yeah. But I was, I got sponsored because I was a loon, not because I was super fast.
Oh, well, personality. I mean, that's what created the environment, the industry, I suppose. It's personalities.
Yeah.
Just as much as skills.
There was a lot of guys that got too serious. You can't take yourself too seriously. Just got to kick back and relax.
Yeah.
It's like my kids, it's about... As my kids were growing up, they played a bit of soccer, and my youngest was like, I want to play for Manchester United or Chelsea. And Dad, if I become a massive star, I'll look after you, don't worry. And then started playing football, and, the club pushing them to train harder and play more. And I'm like, man, it's about fun. Your job will be something else than sport. I don't want you to go into sport as your sole income, that if you do an ACL, your life's over. Make it about fun. Hang out with your mates. If you don't win, don't worry about it. Just have fun.
Yeah. My lad said he was going to play for Barcelona, and he was going to buy me a Lamborghini.
Barcelona, yeah.
And then as we've got older, I'm saying, look, how far away took my Lamborghini? But I don't think it's happening.
I mean, we all had fantasies like that as kids, didn't we? And, sometimes as a parent, where's that line you draw about, sure, all your dreams can come true, but with me, I'm a little bit more of a realist in that I don't want someone to have a dream that's never going to be attainable or achievable. And I don't believe in the motto that you can do anything you want. Not everyone can be an astronaut. Not everyone can be a brain surgeon. And, at the age of 50, I've explored a lot of these things. And it might not be that you're not smart enough. It might just be that your temperament or your personality is not suited to that. And just find what your niche is and what keeps you happy. When I grow up, I'm going to get a job, and one day I'll know what that job is. But until then, I'll just do what I'm doing now.
Yeah. Wait till you grow up. So do you see similarities between, like, when you're a kid and how you looked at your dad, and then now how your dad and how you treat your kids? Do you catch yourself...
I talked earlier about not having grandparents, and something that my parents said to me along the way was, we didn't have a role model. We didn't have parents, really. So we had to learn about how to be a parent as we went along. There was no real support, no family support for them. I've got aunties, 3 aunties, but they all live interstate. And we never saw them, hardly ever. So there was times in my life when, I had clashes with my parents. But I was a pretty good kid and, things sort of worked out in the end. And my dad said to me one day, he said, "You're a better father than I was." And I try to be, but I also feel bad about my parenting at times. You can only do what you can do. Where do you pick the line when you say to your kids, you shouldn't do that. I'm going to ground you for being a bad kid or whatever. That's not my style. I'm more about the learning experience. And still now saying to my kids, you can't put an old head on young shoulders. I can give you advice and say, look, I tried it and this happened. Someone else tried it and look what happened to them. So maybe if you're going to do that, just be aware of what could go wrong and maybe sort of plan for it. Which, doing extreme sports and the stuff that we've done is pretty cray-cray. Yeah, because I'm with the youth. I know what they're saying. So
yeah.
Lol.
Yeah,
FOMO.
OMG. Yeah.
Pretty crazy stuff.
IDK.
Oh, that somehow we came out of it relatively unscathed. You got to take some risks along the way. You got to let kids go to find their way. I didn't read the books. I got given the books about parenting. I didn't read any of them. I just stumbled through it.
And as a parent, you haven't been in that situation to know what your kid needs you to do or be. Do you need to be strict or do you need to be kind and supportive,
How's those same old tunes, though? Oh, you don't know what you're talking about? What do you mean, dude? There was no camera phones when we were kids, so no one could catch you, and we did what we did.
So much harder now to think about bullies and people that back in our generation, if you're a bully, you could bully them when you saw them and it stopped there and then. Whereas now you can keep bullying that person 24/7 on your phone.
Yeah. I'm pretty old-fashioned, My dad was 27 years in the reserves, Army and Air Force, so somewhat strict, and his mother was really strict. So, we had some sort of pretty fiery parenting going on at times. But
that makes you, doesn't it?
Yeah, but so my views are pretty old school, and there's a lot of stuff going on today that I don't agree with, and my boys are a lot like me, and sometimes I have to say to them, look, you can have your point of view, but unfortunately nowadays that's not accepted by a lot of people.
What's an example of that?
I don't want to plead the fifth.
Okay.
I don't want to incriminate myself.
No. All right, fair enough.
I just think that to some degree, there's too many minority groups are getting too much say in what the majority does and too much control. And to some degree, you do have to, as a person in the world, dust it off and not take other people's views as what affects you. One of the key things about personal happiness is no one else makes you think a certain way, only you think that. You've got to take control of your own thoughts and be happy with yourself. And there might be times in your life where you're in a situation that you don't like, and you've just got to pull your socks up and say, well, that's their scene. I'm out of here. I'm going to go and do my own scene or find my own people. Instead of sitting there and going, oh, you can't do that. You can't treat me like this. Go away. We don't all have to be the same. And if you don't like what we're doing, go and find your people and do your thing.
Have you got an example in business or life where you could go into a bit more detail about how, people put you in that position? Adversity, like someone's, they've put you in a bind and you're in the shit and that's just how it is. How do you get out?
I'll come back to that. Get Kevin off the couch. Give him a few seconds.
Yeah.
Kev's up there in the back.
Something went wrong. Something went wrong.
Look, I tried to get into Qantas and the Air Force, and I put probably 2 or 3 years of my life into that, and neither of them panned out. And that was my plan. Dad had his private pilot's license, was in the Air Force Reserves for a long time. My brother's a pilot. I was going down that road, and that was my goal. And it just didn't work out. And that was sort of coming off the back of wanting to get into med school, but going, look, I can't do it. I can't go back to uni for 6 years. I can't do it. And it didn't pan out. And I came at the end of that with the building background and a health science degree, just going, what am I going to do? What am I going to do next? And my passion was building. I liked making things. But I just sort of stumbled along and fell into things. And the surgical medical repping came about by that. It was only ever going to be a short-term thing for me to bankroll building. But here I am 20 plus years later, and people tell me that I'm really good at my job and I'm respected in the industry, and self-doubt and things like that. You feel like an imposter often, that you're not the right person for the job, and one day you're going to get found out.
But you are the right person for the job. You got the
supposedly
skills, the
people tell me
to back
I
you
am.
up, you know.
And you know, one of the things that I don't realise quite often is that through life you do gather knowledge, and all of that knowledge to you becomes just like, doesn't everyone know this? And that's coming back to the parenting. That's one thing that you can't. Kids don't have that knowledge, and sometimes you get frustrated with the kids when they'll come to you and go, they'll do something wrong, or they'll ask you about something, and you go, well, you should know that. You know, come on, that's common sense. And it's not common sense. It's learned.
And see, if you haven't done it, you've got no idea what the result's going to be.
You know, and the lessons, you talk about what lessons have I learned. For me, more so, it's looking at my kids and worrying about them and thinking, well, you know, what are you guys going to do with your life? I know that there's a lot of influences in my kids' life which are steering them towards academia. And, you know, for me, it's just, you've got to be happy. You just got to be happy in yourself, confidence that you're an okay person. And I think one of those things is really being accepting of who you are and what your flaws are. I'm pretty, you know, action-packed. I don't sit still much, and I'm an extrovert. I can talk a lot, and I can talk over people, which there's times when I get what today we'll call social anxiety, from thinking about how you're going to behave in a situation, or afterwards you'll get social remorse where you'll come out of a situation and go, man, was I way too over the top? Did I talk over that person too much? I'm really bad. I'm a bad person.
I think it's natural. I'm a bit the same.
Yeah. You'll come out of it at the end, and you've got to reassure yourself that it's okay. And that comes back to finding your people. You know, I've got friends who along the way have come and gone, and sometimes I'll sit there and go, is that because I talked too much, or because I'm too strong of a personality that quiet people felt oppressed by my presence, kind of thing?
Well, you find your people, don't you?
Yeah, you got to find your people. And you got to realise too that, you know, a lot of your friends who still are there along the way, other people don't like them, but you like them. And why do you like them? And it might be because they've still got flaws, just like we have, but you accept those flaws. And along the way, it's just who that person is.
You can't judge someone by one particular thing that really irks you. You can't judge them.
Yeah,
all of them on that one thing. Oh, they like cats and I like dogs. It's like, well, you can like cats.
Sometimes, though, you know, you have a third party who comes on the scene who might say to you, oh, you know, that person.
Those cats cause allergies.
I don't like that guy because of this and this and this. And you'll go, yeah, I know.
He didn't do it to me. If he didn't
well, no, he might even do it to me too. But you know what? The pros outweigh the negatives.
Yeah.
And I accept those, and I accept that person. But then, you know, there's sometimes when those things cross the line and you've got to go, well, you go your way, man, I'll go mine.
Have you had an experience where you've had a good mate, a good friend, and you've had to go, look, you've overstepped the mark here?
Well, recently this has happened to me. A guy who I actually first met when I was backpacking around Europe. I did a tour of Loch Ness in a bus, and I met these two other Aussie guys, and we got along really well, and turned out both of them from Adelaide. And I'd only known him for a couple of days, and then he went his way, and I didn't see him again for another probably 3, 4, 5 years. I was back in Adelaide at a pub with a couple of friends, and he was there. And I got introduced, and we were chatting away, and I looked at him, and I thought he looked familiar, and we were talking. I talked about life experience, and going around Loch Ness, and we just looked at each other and went, hey, dude, yeah, right on. And we became really good friends from that point. He was a country boy, so we had a lot in common from that point. And we had a lot of fun. He was working, finished high school, went into oil rigs. Was a farmer from the southeast, bit of a black sheep of the family. Worked over in Western Australia on the floor, as a roughneck, they call it, who's basically the bottom of the pile in drilling rigs. He then went and did a degree in accountancy, worked as an accountant for 1 year and said, no, can't do this anymore. Went back into drilling, eventually got into deep water on boats, became the driller, the guy who drives the whole deal. And wrecked his neck, had a double fusion, 2 discs taken out, fused neck, so they wouldn't let him on a helicopter because he couldn't move his head enough anymore. And retired, travelled the world, met a nice girl in Thailand, got married, and was going to Burning Man. Liked to live life to the extreme, partied a lot, used party tools a lot.
Yeah.
And started to lose a bit of grip with reality. And over time, was living in Thailand, and I noticed this decrease in his mental capacity. But I was one of his few really close friends, and I really supported him through all of this. Coming from a medical family, I understand mental health pretty well, and was being very supportive of the guy. And there came a time when you could see that he was really becoming unscrewed. And he threatened me once, and my other half, heard the threat, and I knew that it was a drunken idiot kind of comment.
Blurt.
But she heard it. And he's got a bit of a scary background, and she got really worried about it and was worried that he was going to come up and get us in the middle of the night. And so I had to sort of draw a bit of a line, and I challenged him via SMS, and he was laughing about it and was quite detached about what had gone down. And so I basically put him at arm's length for about 2 years. And we still exchanged SMSs, but I was very arm's length. And when he'd start rabbiting and raving on, I would basically just not respond. And the rabbiting and raving was crazy political talk and sort of crazy stuff.
Conspiracy theories.
Yeah, not
even.
quite
This is
that
a bit
bad.
more personal.
Yeah, some comparisons. Because it was just crazy talk. And when we would have a conversation, you couldn't get a word in, and he would just blah, 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 and you'd go to say one word. Oh, yeah, I know I'm talking a lot, but I've just got to get this out, blah, 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 and we'd just go on and on and on and on and on. And then he went and caught up with a couple of friends at a pub down in the country and got arrested by the cops, head-butted one, cuff taken off, and then got banned from another pub in Adelaide. It was unwinding. And we say this with a smile, but this guy had a story after story after story. He was working for Petrogas out of Brazil and went to Copacabana Beach, and the Great Western Hotel is the largest hotel on the beach. And he got into parachuting and base jumping. And he sent me a video of him in a suit with a backpack up in the lift, comes out on the top floor of the Great Western, walks into the bathroom, undoes the bag, puts his parachute on, helmet with a GoPro, turns the GoPro on. Hey, guys. Walked out and base jumped off the top floor, off the bar. Landed on the beach, got arrested straight away.
What a buzz.
Yeah, it was an awesome story.
I can't base jump, but that would be a personal.
I would love to have got into it.
Yeah.
And so he unwound.
That one's flat too.
And
That's
about 2 months ago, so he and I were contacting. We'd spoken in June via SMS. He told me he was about to base jump off of a big mountain in Spain. And then he'd send me messages he was heading to Burning Man this year. And a month later, his brother contacted me and said that he'd had a base jumping accident in Italy, had jumped off this really popular cliff. They used it for training base jumping, had a bad chute opening, spun around, hit the cliff and broke his neck. And they heli evacuated him off the hill, but he broke it up so high that he'd basically be a Christopher Reeve. If he lived, ventilated for life. And he lasted about a month in ICU in Italy and then died of complications. And, this was a guy who was a really good friend of mine, and I'd watch him go. He'd gone through a lot of hardcore stuff, had almost gone bankrupt, failed relationships. At one point, I thought he was a real high suicide risk.
He was on the edge.
Yeah. And he got through all of that, and I was really trying to support him as much as I could, but we'd had this 2-year sort of hiatus of our relationship where it was at arm's length. And I was really pissed off prior to him doing himself in, because I wanted to resolve this, and I wanted us to have a conversation, and I wanted to be able to say, mate, I've supported you through all of this crap. We need to get back on board. You need to apologise to my other half, and we need to get back on track. And I still have a lot of guilt over the fact that we haven't resolved that.
Didn't get the chance to put that past you.
Yeah. And I've gone through the grief cycles of being angry at him for that, and angry at myself because 6 months ago, he offered to have a sit down and a catch up and everything. And he just unwound so much psychologically by then. And I had pressure from the other half about, I'm worried about this. And I wasn't ready for that. I needed to have the conversation prior to the sit down, and it needed to be a private one-on-one, not my partner and our friends all getting together. It needed to be resolved before then. And I mentioned earlier watching that thing on James Packer this morning, that mental health journey that people go through. I've got another friend at the moment who's a raging alcoholic and is having severe health impacts, and he can't quit the booze. And he's one of my best friends. And I'm going through that journey with him, and I get so distraught about the fact that I can't give him the right advice or the right impetus to make the change to help himself. And I've watched one of my good friends die recently, and I'm sort of watching another one die slowly.
Got to look after your mates, don't you? It's not easy. A lot of people have got a lot of problems. Like life is not a bed of roses, But if you got your mates around you to help you get through those stuff, if you're prepared to ask for some help, you got to you can't reject it when it's offered, and at the same time, you could probably ask.
These things are really difficult, though. The James Packer story about when people, we talk about bipolar, which is the old manic depression. People get to a high and then they go to a low, and the span of those cycles could be years in the high and years in the low, or weeks in the high, weeks in the low. When people get really high on those, they can't accept any input. They know best. They know better than everyone else. And to watch someone go through that and feel helpless and not be able to help them. And then we're in the low, low, low. You try and help them and they absorb some of it, but they just can't take it at that point in time. They have to get there themselves to the point where they will accept it. And as the friend on the outside, being able to observe that, I'm lucky in that, I've got a lot of education in that area, and I can sort of pick the signs and things. And if it's your close friend, you can see the signs. You might just not be aware of them. The "are you okay" thing. And just that little bit of, trying to just keep niggling at them enough to go,
open up for a conversation.
Yeah. But not piss them off enough by pushing them that they then shut down on you.
Did you find yourself at the low lows at one stage that you'd be happy to share or talk about? When you're at the lows, how do you get out?
Well, my personality is a bit like that. I'm probably subclinically depressed at times, subclinically bipolar. I have high highs and low lows, and they happen all the time. I've evened out a lot more. My current partner, Jo, she's awesome. She's really supportive, and she's helped me to even my keel a lot more. There's a lot less conflict in my relationship now, and we're getting better and better. We got engaged earlier this year, and even since getting engaged, it's just, we've been together for 10 years. Yeah. And, she said to me, if you don't ask me before 10 years, then don't ask. So I asked her on the day of 10 years.
I was late with asking my wife to marry me as well. So,
you guys were together back in the day.
Yeah, it was a long time.
That was a long time ago.
I think it was more than 10.
Yeah. So, things have improved even since then. I've got more care, more devotion. The real hard part too is there's so many broken families now. And when you come together with your own children, it's hard to make a real marital or a real partnership bond, regardless of marriage, if you don't share children, because you've always got this outside influence trying to,
And depends how that relationship resolved itself as well.
Yeah. Mine's not good. So that makes life difficult.
Your kids, they'll live and they'll learn through all of it. And despite you thinking you're doing good or bad or indifferent, they're going to learn what they learn and they'll make their judgments accordingly. Isn't that what you did of your parents?
Yeah. Still do. I think with my kids, it's honesty, really just trying to let them know at times I'm not coping. I'm a normal person and I'm not coping. So I'm sorry if I'm short and
Dads
sharp.
Don't always get it right.
Yeah.
Like, who'd have thought that? Like, dads and mums are supposed to always get it right, but we don't.
I'm really lucky. My kids are all pretty well grounded and they're all pretty normal. And they've all got a good head. They're all screwed on. They can work out what's going on, as you say. Low times for me, university and study was a low time. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have the impetus to go that further step of the places where I thought I wanted to go and I thought I wanted to be. I sort of get the best of both worlds in medicine now. I go in and sit in on operations in brain surgery, liver surgery. I advise the surgeons. I stand in the background and look over their shoulder with a laser pointer and say, do this, do that, cut this, cut that. So I get the best of both worlds. I don't have to worry about the patients per se. I just go and help the surgeon and help him and do the really cool parts. But I don't have enough devotion to go and do what they do, which is, 24/7. Well, even though I am 24/7. Just that thing where you're beholden to the patients in the end of the day. So being at uni and not knowing where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do was really depressing. And I hate study. I don't want to go through over and over learning something and parrot fashioning back. So it's really depressing for me. I've got a pretty good memory. I can do well in tests without doing much work. As long as I've seen it once, I can do okay. But I just hate study. So, yeah, they were low times. My relationship breakdown was pretty bad. No one ever goes into a marriage planning on it breaking down. My parents are still together. They've had challenging times, as every marriage does. But for my relationship to fail and my kids to not have two parents who live in the same house, I still get depressed about that at times.
What age were your kids when that was happening?
Youngest was 5. Oldest was 9.
Very informative years for young kids.
Yeah, but, I felt like at that stage, and my brother and I had conversations about this, I was still young enough that I wanted to be able to get on and enjoy my life before...
Do you need to get that?
No, that's right. It's the sun. He can wait.
His ears are burning.
Yeah. I wanted to be young enough to still get on and have another relationship, I wanted to have a loving...
If it didn't work, if it hasn't worked, don't hang on.
Yeah, not to say that over 50 you can't have a good relationship, but certainly now being 50, yeah.
It's good to have a good one.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what age you are.
Yeah.
It'd be great to be in a good relationship. And
physically, we're not the same over 50 in many ways. And you want to be able to enjoy those things when you're a bit younger.
Put the mirrors away.
Yeah. And, being men, we are quite visually stimulated, of course,
All right. Well, look, I think this has been awesome. And I think the cameras, the batteries are starting to fade. This one's dying. I think most of them are gone. So we might come close to wrapping this up. I'd definitely have you back. So enjoyable talking and chatting. We could do this for ages.
I can't wait to do the multi-team. Let's get all 4 in here. Let's bounce a few people. And
yes, for you viewers, I have a plan for some foreplay. And we'll tell you a bit more about that next time. But if we're wrapping this up, you got a good couple lessons in life or something inspiring that you might say to someone that's not having the best of days?
I watch too much on the social pages at the moment, and I'm getting a lot of things. The what do you call it? The analog is sending me these messages. It's picking up on where I'm at and what my scene is. I've always been one to somewhat do my own thing. And I think really you've got to strike that balance between pleasing whoever it is, your parents, your partner, and pleasing yourself. And that whole concept of self-love is really important. You've got to focus on keeping yourself honest and being honest to other people and being honest to yourself. If I look at relationships, like you said, don't drag stuff on. Do what you love what you do, and just try and be happy. If we talk about depression and sadness, there are ways out. Talk to your mates. That's the first thing you need to do is talk to your mates. Get the right help when you're in your lows. Everyone's got high and low times. Try and look for the positive behind when one door closes, one door opens. In my life, I've opened so many doors along the way. I've been very lucky. I've been exposed to a lot of things. I'm good at a lot of things, and that's what makes my life hard at times because making a choice is difficult. And more nowadays, kids are getting more and more choice. Look at the things you want to do. Don't worry too much about, staying in one thing. If it doesn't work out, do something else. Don't worry. Be happy, bruh.
Killer.
Thanks
awesome.
all for having me, man. It's been awesome.
Awesome.
I hope you guys enjoyed it out there too. And stay tuned. Wait until we get a whole crew in here, and we're going to have a massive day.
The stories will fly.
Thanks, Ol.
Great to have you. Cheers, mate.
Love it.